OK, lots to come then, but we're going to start with Arsenal, who returned to the top of the Premier League table with a 2-0 win. Injury hits Wolves. Mikel Arteta put their midweek Champions League exit behind them, with goals from Leandro Trossard and captain Martin Odegaard as well. So, Sam, look, not a classic to watch, it has to be said, but it was really important for Arsenal to get back to winning ways, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think the defeat to Villa at home last Sunday, such a huge game against their former manager as well. And the manner in which it was inflicted upon them, and Villa played really well in the second half, would have asked big questions of them. Plus, being knocked out of the Champions League as well.
Yeah.
So, Wolves had lots and lots of injuries. They had 5 teenagers on the bench. Gary O'Neill is really struggling with the depth of his squad. But Arsenal went and won that game, which is crucial. I mean, I think if you look at the alternative, if they don't get 3 points there, then things would have looked really grim for them.
Yeah, it would have, wouldn't it? I mean, it was a difficult week, Darren. They obviously play again, don't they, against Chelsea before City have a chance to play as well. So that's going to build more pressure, you'd think, on City if they can go even further in front at the top of the table.
Yeah, I mean, I think the psychology of yesterday was all important. Had they not won, even if they'd have drawn, our analysis of the point would have been 2 points dropped, Arsenal season unravelling again in April. The stats suggest that they do run out of puff in April. And given the manner of the defeat last week at home to Aston Villa, and then against what many people describe as the most disappointing Bayern side for 12 years, the feeling would have been, unfairly so, I have to say, that it would have been characterised as a choke, a bottle. I hate that term, I hate that phrase, because you look into the building of a team, the work that Arteta's done there to improve the culture, bring down the playing age, to recruit the right talents, not just with ability, but also in terms of temperament and what they offer to the club. And so I think they've done great work there so far. And for them to continue that momentum yesterday by coming out and responding to the setbacks, that's another big step in their development, and obviously puts the pressure back on City and Liverpool to continue their momentum. And
it was their 6th successive clean sheets away from home. The Premier League record actually is 7. But a word for Leandro Trossard, you know, somebody that I've chatted to at length about his ability and what he's done so far this season. He's scored some crucial goals for them, one of which was yesterday, getting them, you know, going in terms of that game. Should he be a starter more regularly, do you think? Or is he just an impact sub, and that's kind of the role that he needs to play for Arsenal right now? Yeah,
it's an interesting question. He wasn't...
She asks it every week. She's on commission.
He was signed, I mean, arguably as Brighton's best player, and clearly they were... I think he wasn't going to extend his contract, so they made the decision. I mean, one kind of thinks, well, if Martinelli, Jesus and Saka are fit, then they start. But, I mean, you have to look at the great City team of the last 5 years. It's 2 players for every position. It's different people coming up at different parts. There's different players coming at different parts of the season. So I think this notion of managers are pushed back on this quite a lot, that the starting 11, clearly if you're going to play the Champions League final tomorrow, every manager's got an 11 in his mind. But players that finish games, they now like to call substitutes finishers.
Yes, they do, don't they? Subs, that's a new phrase.
Which is a kind of rebranding of what was once a slightly stigmatised position. I think whether he starts or not, they play so many games, as we will later discuss. There will always be enough games for these lads. But yes, I think if there was a Champions League final tomorrow and Arteta had the full complement fit, he wouldn't be in the side. It's
quite refreshing, though, to see a player that doesn't get a regular start to just absolutely come on and do what he does, I think. You know, he's really impactful. But that speaks to what I was saying before about the recruitment. It's not just about the ability, it's the right kind of temperament. It's the kind of player where if he's on the bench despite playing well the previous week, he's okay with the game. Exactly. Yeah. And you see those kinds of players at Liverpool and at Manchester City as well. And you talk about the contributions he made. Scored the winner against Everton earlier in the season, late equaliser against Chelsea, winner in the Champions League game against Porto, a late winner in that game, equaliser in the first leg of the quarter-final against Bayern. Had he not scored that goal, the advantage would have... OK, Bayern went on to win the tie anyway, but he brings a tie level. He is a guy who responds to pressure with composure in the final third. That is absolutely what Arsenal need.
going into a crucial stage of the season. So as far as he is, and you spoke to him last week, you did the interview with him last week, and you can see the kind of guy he is. Despite all the fanfare, the circus and all the headlines about him, he still sees himself as a team player.
Yes.
That kind of thing is so crucial when you get into this stage of the season. It's not all about him, it's about what Arsenal, Arteta and his teammates are trying to do.
Just before we get to the papers, I just want to talk about Arsenal because, you know, when you watch them, they did look lacklustre. Do you feel that, you know, there was a phrase, I think Charlotte Dunker used it in her Times report, saying that, you know, teams are running on fumes. Is that a feeling that you get from what you witness at the moment from some teams?
Yeah, this is a really difficult, even these couple of weeks when you think they've played Bayern Munich, then they've had Wolves, and then they've got Chelsea on Tuesday. So that's just Arsenal's schedule. It is a hard time, and the Premier League is run at an incredible standard. I know we've come out of a week where we've only got, as a country, we've only got one team left in Europe, but the intensity of it is extraordinary, and you only have to watch. You have to compare to see that. I mean, I was at the City Real Madrid game, and I think 8.5 times out of 10 City win that game, and Real just looked gone. They looked exhausted, and they did it. It was a great effort to hang on basically on the edge of their area for about 50 minutes. So I think to expect these players to maintain that standard all the way through is going to be hard. The kind of intensity that we're used to. That's why we noticed the drop off. But yeah, that's why they have these big squads to try and get them through these really, really difficult. Well, it's a marathon of a season.
Yeah, it certainly is. Marathon today. Well done. Good link. Not talking about that. Darren, what are the papers saying? Because we're really enjoying this three-way race for the title.
Absolutely.
Arsenal very much put themselves back in it, surely.
Absolutely. I've been saying every week. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping a bit on Arsenal in terms of. Thank you, Director, for just putting it up there, because I was trying to find a way to get there and I was thinking, what am I going to do? So thank you. Trossard process. Arsenal at the moment have the best defensive record in the Premier League. This is Graham Bryce's terrific match report. And in it, look at the subdeck at the bottom. He describes what they've had as a week from hell. And he'd be absolutely right, because all of our jaws dropped when Aston Villa went to the Emirates and took them apart with a fantastic defensive display, and then those goals in the second half. And then Bayern beat them in the Champions League, and everyone could be forgiven for thinking that what would happen would be similar to last season, where they dropped points against Southampton and West Ham. But instead, this, again, Trossard off the bench scoring, Odegaard scoring late, a fabulous technique for that goal. And that defensive display to underline the balance in the side. And Graham's basically saying that it is that ability to keep the back door closed, which could now prove crucial in these final weeks of the campaign.
The goal difference could be everything.
Absolutely. City can score goals too, but that balance in the side, they've recruited so well. That could be the difference as we go into the final 4 games of the season.
I think also, you know, talking to Trossard last week, he was saying we've learned, but also Mikel Arteta's learned from last year. If they didn't, that would be crazy to think that they hadn't learned from it. It was it felt humiliating for them at times, really, what they went through last season. So you'd think that they have to learn from that, surely.
Yeah, I mean,
it appears they have.
The story of the Premier League and indeed English football before that is teams. They often go close to winning a title, which is why I quite fancied Arsenal this season. Because even if you look at Manchester United finishing second in '92, and then what happened after that, and City clearly under the Abu Dhabi regime went close a few times before they finally won it in when was it 2011. So yeah, that is the sort of the pattern. But the difference for Arsenal is they're up against, well, the difference for everyone is they're up against this just Goliath in terms of City, who are very, very hard to move.
Do you think we are more, as journalists, we are more forgiving of Arsenal because we understand the context? The documentary told us a lot about the way that he was taking apart the old Arsenal, constructing the new Arsenal. We can see the emotional lessons they've learned. We've seen all the team talks and the lows, the highs. So when we do a match report, or when we give an analysis of Arsenal now, we do it from a much more informed point of view.
I think it goes back further than that, Darren. To be honest, I mean, you and I both started 20 odd years ago, you know, as young pups reporting on Arsene Wenger.
Still are young pups.
Yeah, we looked a lot different. And Arsenal made this huge decision at the turn of the millennium to build the Emirates. And they did it because the received wisdom then was that you needed a bigger stadium. You still do now, really. And this beautiful old ground at Highbury was not really fit for the 21st century. What they could never have factored in was first Roman Abramovich and then Sheikh Mansour, which completely changed the landscape of football. They were prepared to take that little bit of pain in the noughties in order to get the stadium built and then go again, and to have a stadium that rivaled Old Trafford and, of course, London. You can charge more for your hospitality and so on. And really, the landscape changed while they were building it, and they never really recovered. They never recovered, really, because after they got to the Champions League final in 2006, they won their last title in 2004. They were always chasing. I mean, City bought a lot of their players. I mean, they simply just couldn't. The financial controls weren't as strong then in terms of, so they just fell behind. And that initiative, that power they had as one of the two great teams of English football at the turn of the century, was lost, and sadly the end of Wenger's regime was what we all know it was. It was rather bitter and unhappy. So that's the kind of bigger picture for me, and they have built back very well. They've given Arteta a lot of money. They have to not just to sign players, but to trade players out and to get rid of players. But he's done a fantastic job, and that they are where they are now, as a club that doesn't have a billionaire owner, which really has to. It does have a billionaire owner, it just doesn't have a billionaire owner that's going to spend as much as others do. Is a great achievement.
Yeah, you make a good point.